All right. This ride, holy moly, we could just have ridden for hours.
Yeah, Jeremy Sherman, PhD, is a warm, wonderful, insightful, inspiring, beautiful human being who you are going to love. I really, really hope that we get to spend more time with them. If you can't make it through the full 90 minutes, take it and come back to it. There's so much. It just shifts and shifts, and there's so much richness in it. And what a jolly good fellow.
Yeah. And it occurs to me that his plethora of experiences have really created the individual he is. And he's sharing from an academic perspective, but also with a lot of life experience in that academia.
Yeah, very grounded human conversation. And it's if you are at all stimulated by intellectualism, this is definitely the podcast for you. But it's accessible to those of us who don't have PhDs as well. So definitely subscribe to the podcast, support us so we can continue. Please help the Compton Cowboys and Blast do what they do. They are making a powerful difference in the lives of human beings. We really appreciate your time and energy, so welcome to the party.
Sis, hallo?
Blijven.
Stuur zeker wegen them.
Yo je iets niet, joh.
Two outlaws on the lam, taking the back roads through America.
You can't drink enough coffee for this show.
And now it's time for Monday Madness with the Moped Outlaws, Greg and Mark.
And we're live with another episode of Moped Outlaws. And today we're very honored to have as our writing guest, Dr. Jeremy Sherman, who has thoughts about hypocrisy and its innate element in one's becoming a human being. And as I understand it, from what little research I've done, he is very interested in why life started to matter from a meaningless matter.
Yeah, not bad at all. So I consider my work to be cradle to grave, from the origins of life, the physical origins of life, to our grave situation. And a lot of our grave situation has to do with hypocrisy. And at the same time, I love the name of your podcast because Moped Outlaws is ironic, meaning that it reverses on itself. What my dad called Escherisms. One of his favorites was, I haven't lived my life in vain for nothing. These are terms that flip back on each other. And actually, there's a relationship between that kind of flip-flopping and what my research colleagues and I see as the origins of mattering, how mattering emerged within nothing but matter. So you could say how we became human, or how to become human. That's a little more prescriptive. It's like here's advice about how to do it. My work is more on what the actual fuck we are. That is, what is it? What does it mean to be alive? And it started for me when I had abandoned a kind of spiritual virtue signaling hippie thing. I was an elected elder on the world's largest hippie commune for 7 years. And I was finding that me and my friends, we were virtue signaling a lot. And I thought, okay, well, I'm dropping this Buddhist smarmy dharma. And I was thinking, okay, well, what am I going to replace it with? And I got really interested in how we shop among interpretations, how we respond to phenomena. And I thought, well, if I really want to understand that, I should go to science and evolutionary biology. And then with coming into contact with my main research colleague, I realized that evolutionary theory was not going to explain that. It doesn't explain how you get mattering. Darwin assumed the struggle for existence. He said as much. So even today, most science doesn't deal with this question of how mattering emerged from matter. And so getting it at the very bottom, I mean, my work in the chemistry of how you could ever have a chemical system that starts struggling for its own existence. You start as stripped down as that, and then working out how humans evolved eventually out of that, how you ended up the kind of sentience that a plant has, which is that it is struggling for its own existence. How you get neuronal sentience, feeling, pleasure, pain, that kind of stuff that all animals have, and then what happens when you get language, and how it really changes things for us humans. So all that goes into my work. I've got a Columbia University book on the origins of life, and my next book was called "What's Up with Assholes: How to Spot and Stop Them Without Becoming One."
So based on what you just said, it sounds like in the beginning there was the word, and the word was the beginning of the chaos.
Yeah, I'm delighted that you say that. Actually, the way I think about it, I have paraphrased that beginning of Genesis, is that the end of the beginning was the word, because we got 3.8 billion years of living history before language, and language driving under the influence of language makes us radically different in ways that I pay a lot of attention to. What it's like to have, we are by far the most anxious species around, because with language we can conceive of all sorts of things, including our own deaths. It makes us an extremely visionary, anxious, and delusional species compared to the others.
How do you account for mammalian communication in the ocean, such as whales and dolphins, in that thesis?
Yeah, so a lot of this work has to do with what's called semiotics, which is the study of significance or what signs are, but I call it hermeneology, which is the study of the emergence and evolution of interpretation, and the kind of behavior they engage in, we do as well, but we also have language on top of that, is called indexical, meaning that it's like Pavlov's dog. There are signs out, there are things that they interpret and respond to in a certain way. What would be an example of indexical? If you hear a dog bark in the other room, you assume there's a dog there. So that's a kind of interpretation. That's called indexical. Something points to it. But we're doing something different. We're the symbolic species. We use symbols, and that's a whole other game, which is you have these culturally maintained tokens. A word is a token that we interpret. So I just said the word we, you were able to interpret that, but it's held by convention within a society, and we have a sense of what it refers to. So there's a difference between indexical and symbolic communication. And when a tree responds to changes in day length, that's indexical too. So this is an important distinction, and I was talking to an anthropologist who works on animal human communication the other day about how much trouble people have distinguishing the indexical kind of communication you get in whales and what we do as humans. There's almost an insult to it. People feel insulted. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm wondering how you are so definitive that symbolic communication is not happening amongst
that's exactly the response, and it's phenomenal because it works in two opposite ways. So I get it two ways. One version of it is, how dare you treat humans as exceptional? That's arrogant. And the other is what I call romantic humanism, which is the sense that we are. So I get the other kind of counter argument as well, which is, because we have language, we can be rational all the time, transcend our animal nature. And so that's what your response was, exactly what I was talking about with the anthropologist, and she deals with it all the time in her classroom.
Well, here's what I'm wondering, because from my understanding, when we all locked down and the cargo ships were no longer operating on the oceans, my understanding is that the whale bursts went up because their communication was, they were able to communicate naturally, because the noise in the ocean was no longer present.
I never denied that they're communicating. They're communicating indexically. That would be the difference. It would be so they're not. They don't have. So check out this radical difference. They have a bunch of different, what we call affordances. There sounds out there or whatever that they can respond to, and they respond in ways that are socially beneficial. There are, you could say it's sort of a culture, but it's radically different than what we do. With us, there are 30,000 different words that we learned in our childhood, and we can mix and match them to conceive of anything. So, for example, I could describe to you a rhinoceros in a pink tutu with a candy cane horn twirling the universe on its horn, and you get it. I challenge you on whether whales could do that, whether the boats are around or not. It's
Got it.
different. Yeah, so it's a difference, but I'm really glad you demonstrated this kind of response. We're definitely talking about communication. We're talking about semiotics. A lot of my work is in what we call biosemiotics, which is trying to understand how interpretation happens at all levels within the body, for example, how DNA becomes about something for a body that's trying to stay alive. And yet we have to make this distinction.
Well, I saw in one of your videos, you were talking about how as infants, we lose our autonomy almost instantly, which makes us hypocrites because we need to learn a language in order to survive. And we're given that language from our parents, whom we're relying on.
Yeah, that's right. So we would argue that humans are parasitic on culture, whether it's parents or not. We're really slow getting grounded compared to other animals. And part of that, I think, is the clusterfuck we have to deal with as humans. I mean, Metamorphosis by Kafka, that story? Okay. So Kafka waking up as a beetle would actually be relatively easy. A beetle waking up as a human, whoa, that would be hard work to suddenly come to terms with the chaos. I mean, just the cluster flux of being human is
God
intense.
damn it. I could step into this.
Please, go ahead.
There's just so many avenues with you. And so what I want to do is, your work is really deep and broad, and we could really spend a lot of time on the results of your work. And I want to begin also to kind of get to know the you behind the work.
Good. Yes.
So one of the questions I have is, are there any chemical compounds that were behind the transition during the hippie elder phase?
Oh, totally. No, I'm
Did
still
you
a
take
stoner.
drugs?
No, I'm a stoner. On the commune, the pot was considered our sacrament. We didn't do alcohol at all, and we didn't have access to many psychedelics, though we endorsed them. And when we had them, for example, for 2 of those years on the commune, I was working on water projects in Guatemala. We had our own Peace Corps, hippie Peace Corps, and I played in Guatemala's first rock band. Not rock band. There were probably a few, but certainly hippie rock band. Anyway, no, we would collect up pajaritos, these mushrooms from the cow pies out there. But mostly we were stoners when we could be. And I don't get stoned during the day, but I get stoned in the evening. I find it a lovely.
So was there an epiphany that led you out of that cultural context that was related to some form of compound ingestion? Or
No.
Okay.
In fact, I have real trouble with the way that people treat drugs as a source of revelation. Revelation is how most people have intuited throughout history what we are. So you get the sense that you get in a certain state and then the truth is revealed to you. And I don't buy it. It's garbage in, garbage out. I had an ayahuasca trip a couple of years ago, and people got up and sang, and there was one guy who sang pretty lamely. And you're supposed to come in with a question. Afterwards, he was saying his question was, should I become a musician or a psychotherapist? And I said, so what did it tell you? Musician? No, not really.
Well, okay.
Well, maybe he saved a bunch of patients from being tortured.
But here's this element of communication and what do you call it? Symbiotic communication? What is it?
Symbolic.
Symbolic.
So there's a difference between indexes and symbols.
Right. Okay. So here's this person who has this experience, and potentially they could have become a musician, because they could have made the choice, and then their actions from that choice would have led to musician.
It's possible. We're only talking. So in all of this work, what I'm paying attention to is likelinesses. What's likely to happen? We're paying attention to probability, what's likely to happen. For example, I'm likely to be alive tomorrow. It's not a sure thing. But we're talking about changes in likeliness. How changes in likeliness happen, because we were likely physically we were possible at the origins of the universe, but now we're way likelier than we were back then.
All right, we're talking about consciousness. So I'm wondering, is in your knowledge, is consciousness data held in electricity within our biology?
So this is an important fussy area where friends find me peevish, because it entails that stuff. There is electricity, but we'd have to unpack the word data. What do we mean by data? Because there is an assumption. I've got colleagues like this who drive me crazy, and the feeling's mutual, who want to treat the world like it's a giant computer. And we say the map is not the territory, but actually the math is not the territory. The universe is not out there doing computation. We are. In the beginning, in the end of the beginning, we got words and math and all of that stuff. And that's how we can model the world. But this is a fundamental problem. Most biologists are perfectly fine saying that this hormone triggered this emotion. And they're kind of talking like we're machines because it's a trigger involved. Right. But a hormone doesn't have any motivations or appetites. Right. And what did it trigger? It triggered this kind of black box. So, for example, I've talked to the head of the psych division at American Psychology Association, and he said that he got into all this stuff to figure out whether we were deterministic machines like computers. And I said, so what do you decide? He said, we're deterministic machines. In the meantime, he's still using words like motivation. I asked him what a motivation is. He says, well, if you see effort, then you assume a motivation. You assume a motivation's happening in a body, but it's not the chemistry. You could call it a force, but it's not pounds per square inch. So that's where the mattering versus matter thing comes from. And I don't get to pull out my butt anything like the term data or information. I have to explain what information is starting from nothing but chemistry. And that's why my focus is on interpretation. That anything can become information. It only is information when it's about something for some organism trying to do something.
One of the questions that I have never really seen answered is, are the brain chemicals a byproduct of the emotion, or are they creating the emotion? And it seems like so much psychology is going with the belief that the chemical is creating the emotion, which is why we have psychiatric.
Right. Okay. And notice the word create. So this is where I said, like, I've gotten really fussy about the words, because there's a whole, my book on this stuff is called Neither Ghost Nor Machine. So the machine part, it would be, it causes it. And ghost is a little bit like create. Okay. So the chemicals are trying to produce. Basically, my work is on what are selves and trying, and how did they start? So I don't get to talk about chemicals as trying to do anything. So what I would say is, I got to avoid two mistakes. One is to say, since there's only matter, then we are just the push and pull effects of matter bouncing into, attracted and resisting each other, atoms. Okay. The other one is what we call dualism, which is, well, I get to bring in some concept that I can imagine because I got language. Like I could say, I've got a spirit, or God had a spirit and he poured it into me, or DNA is an information-bearing molecule. What do you mean? You just pulled out your butt this concept of information as if from another realm that gets packed into matter. I got to avoid both of those. It's wild. And in the meantime, most of science, because I read this stuff, dances around that question. Doesn't want to deal with it. Doesn't want to deal with it. So you get this wild effect. In a university, a physics professor can't say the moon is trying to pull on the tides. Down the hall, the biologists and psychologists, social scientists are talking about trying all the time, and they haven't explained the gap. That's where we work.
So there's this book, Dancing with the Woolly Masters, which tends to imply that there's an unseen force in science that is not causal in the terms of the way we like to have molecular interaction be described through the lens of physics and causes. What's your experience with that book, and how would you entertain the idea of there being unseen forces a la an Elan Vital or a kind of mysterious religious force in nature that we would refer to with the three-letter word God?
No.
Him who shall not be named.
No, that's way over on the dualist side of things.
What do you mean it's way over on the dualist side of things? What do you mean?
Well, what I'm saying is that anybody can declare an unexplained explanation, like spirit or God, and it's kind of a wild card trump card, because you could say, well, it's unseen, and in the case of this, it might be permanently unseen. And if it is seen, it'll be in physical matter, that what we see. For example, if God skywrote in the sky, that'd be physical. But so it still wouldn't get us a purchase on this unseen, unexplained explanation. And this is what we've been doing throughout history, and it feels really good. It's very therapeutic. It could be really helpful to someone's soul, just like an ayahuasca trip or whatever. But in the meantime, it doesn't get to the question I'm dealing with. So that's why neither goes. That's a ghost kind of model of things. In the meantime, you still got to explain how it interacts with the physical. Which, for example, if I talk about God's will, there's a lot of detailed fuss about, cultural fuss about what God wants, but how he manifests in physical form, what he wills, how he actually exercises his willpower in physical terms, is mostly an avoided question.
So the ghost in the machine would be, quote, like a spark or a catalyst that doesn't originate within the physical physics of the interaction. Right.
That would be dualism.
And that you're calling that on the dualism side of things.
Yeah, because there's two realms. There's this realm, there's the natural realm, and then there's a supernatural realm. And the way I see it, science is a campaign to find natural explanations for all natural phenomena.
Well, what if we were the third rail? What if there was a third polarity, and that the human being's a model of that to be understood through the lens of it's not dual like that?
Yeah. So I'm a fisher of folks, but it's all catch and release. If you don't buy my stuff, but what if those what ifs, you could even do them as Mad Libs, have been going on since the origins of humans. And that's one of the things that humans have been doing all along, is they've been saying, okay, but what if there's this other force? And then they equivocated about it. They could say, well, it's physical, but it's also not physical. Like information is considered physical, but it's also considered not physical. All sorts of dancing around the question. And what I've been doing for these 30 years with my research colleague is avoiding that, to try to get to the nub of it, to try to figure out what the actual fuck I am. Well, but all I want to say about that, Mark, is that there are jillions of models like that, and they brand the supernatural whatever with all sorts of names, but naming is not explaining. So I'm fine saying I have a spirit or a will or Elan Vital, but I still got to explain it. Right. And that's mostly danced around.
And naming is a function of human dialect.
It's a function of this. At the end of the beginning was the word, and it made it so we are extremely like this. We call it the Platonic headstand. Plato was one of the first to do it, but everybody was doing it back then. I mean, I've been reading a lot of the early philosophers lately to try to understand the psychology when you get language. These are the first people thinking about all this stuff, and they're all doing that. It's the natural effect of language. Language itself feels like it's from another world.
It seems to me that the conundrum is we are attempting to understand infinity in the realm of the finite.
I would actually frame it a little different. I think with words you get the concept of infinity and the infinite good. It's not a real thing. Infinity is not real. But we can imagine it, and we do, and we imagine the infinite good, and we see where we fall short, and then we align ourselves with some concept of the infinite and feel better about ourselves because we're humans.
Am I understanding your statement correctly? And you feel that in our universe there is a border, there's an end to it?
I wouldn't speak to the details of that and the multiverse and all of that, but so far everything suggests to me that infinite is impossible. It's a useful concept. There are things we do with it that are useful. The infinitesimals in calculus, for example, but it's not. It's an idealization. Human minds can idealize in a way that your whales can't, even when the boats aren't around. They can't do it. They don't have the language for it. They're lucky.
Okay, because I can feel here's my human part that wants to argue.
Yes, I get it. So yeah, please do.
Because I feel like just mathematically, you can add 1 forever. You could go 1 plus
right.
1 equals 2. 2 plus 1 equals 3.
I understand.
You could do that forever and ever and ever.
That's right, but that's not a counter argument to what I'm saying, because with math, which is a language thing that would be discovered anywhere in the universe by any symbolic species, any intelligent life form would have figured out infinity. We can do that. In the meantime, let me bring it back home. In this work, because I deal with all sorts of gadflies like Greg, I want to point to 2 things that would come with being human. One is autophobia and the other is cephalophobia. So cephalophobia, I'll start with that one, is fear of decay. No organism can survive in its own feces. Okay. And it's fascinating because we did. In the Middle Ages, there was feces in the street. And yet what were people doing? They were imagining the infinite good and eternal life, right? Okay, it took till 160 years ago for us to figure out the second law of thermodynamics. That's a long time to figure out that things are decaying, especially because we were surrounded by decay. Okay, so there's that one. Autophobia fascinates me.
What is it?
It's fear of self-knowledge. I just want the truth, but it better be affirming. And so I just think I don't think we really want the truth.
So why is it?
We want this. It's confirmation bias. I'll take in the more affirming parts of it. I just want the truth, but it better be good. So that ambivalence is right there in us from the beginning. Because I'm feeling most of all. Words are a thin overlay on that, and I'm bound to pick up the concepts that feel better to me than not. So there's also a kind of an agnosticism about it. You heard it from me a minute ago. It's fine with me. The fisher of men, but all catch and release. That's all about, dude, you don't have to take my word on what you are.
In fact, don't. Find out for yourself who you are.
Nah. No, take my word.
He's done a lot more research than we have, Greg. So the way I interpret what you're saying, Jeremy, is that science is the ultimate compensation for the feeling of core insecurity.
Compensation is the interesting word there, because I would say that the dualism is the ultimate anxiety reliever, but that science is
isn't it a different side of the same coin? We're all trying to figure this out, and we've identified this thing we call science as a means to resolve that sense of insecurity and meaninglessness to the structure of the cosmos.
Right. So yes. So a couple things about that. In our work, one guy introduced my research colleague, Terence Deacon, by saying that he's arguing that meaning is real but has no original or ultimate meaning. So I'm quite confident that my life is meaningless in terms of the universe's heat death, when it all falls apart, okay? And I also don't think that the universe started with me in mind, or it did. I don't think it started with, I think that mattering emerged from matter. I don't think that matter emerged from mattering. I don't believe in God, for example. or a higher power or whatever you want to call it. I don't see a distinction between spirituality and religion because they're both saying there's some supernatural force that's trying to do something. I have to start from the assumption for my work that that matter came first, and not matter, but physical. The physical came first. It's not just matter. The space between matter matters a lot. There's mostly space between matter. So I'm not a materialist, but I am a naturalist or physicalist. In the meantime, Bertrand Russell describes philosophy as a peculiarly stubborn attempt to think clearly. And philosophy is a weird name for a field because it's called love of wisdom, which any dipshit can claim. So why did we call it love of wisdom? My sense is that the best way to interpret that is you've got to love wisdom more than you love yourself. And that's really hard work for humans to do. And I love this this short poem on the subject. Philosophers find their true perfection knowing the follies of humankind by introspection. Love that. Yeah. So you got to actually be able to look at yourself, fleas and all, and you have to counter the autophobia, the fear of self-knowledge, warts and all, in order to pull it off effectively. And I wouldn't say most of what goes on in philosophy these days does that. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, part of like what I hear you and Mark talking a lot about is a perspective from duality. And what I see with a lot of our youth who are experimenting and questioning gender and what that means is they're saying this duality isn't real. That was placed on us. And actually there is a plethora of potentials that are beyond duality. And I'm wondering if that can also be brought into the science that you're working with, where perhaps duality is limiting the knowledge available and exploring why we matter.
Yeah, so I assume this is where I break with math, for example, your infinity thing before, that the universe, the natural universe, the physical universe is continuous, whereas math is discrete. Math is you're either this or you're that. Even down to the finest decimal dust, you're still either this or that. So that's one of the problems with language, is that it tends to create dualities. At the same time, there are this work, my PhD is in decision psychology, and I got really interested in the binds where you got to either choose this or that, and where there are opposites. I call them acids, ambiguous cues, incompatible do's. That is, you can't tell whether it's situation A or B, and what you would do in those situations. If it's A, you would do X. If it's B, you would do Y. X and Y are opposites. So I actually have to make a choice sometimes. Either I'm going to marry or not, either I'm pregnant or not. There are those kind of binaries. And when you think about what's going on neuronally, it's turning continuous into digital. That is, what's going on electrically is on a continuum, more or less. And then it has to either transmit the neurotransmitters or not, based on having reached a threshold. The other interesting thing about language is that language makes it possible for us to have categories of things where we cut the universe at the joints. But when a whale is responding, it's more it's more like a threshold effect. Or if you think about a bacterium and how it moves towards sugar, it's about more or less. There's a threshold effect. They're not working from categories. I could imagine, I can model them as saying, if X, then do Y, if X, then A, if Y, do B, that kind of thing. That's all like programming, and it's how you get the whole computationalist model that is so popular among so many scientists I have to deal with.
One of the things,
love you.
one of the things I noticed about when I was reading about you and researching you was that there's over 2,000 neologisms that you've created.
It's true.
And I'm wondering if you've ever written a poem with your neologisms.
All the time. No, so I
What is
First
a
of all, let's talk
neologism?
about what a neologism
Yeah.
is. for those-
Neologisms are coined terms. That is, you make up a term. And one of the earliest terms I coined, I didn't know. I assumed that it was low-hanging fruit and someone else had come up with it. Is to name it is to tame it. So I have ended up accumulating over 5,000, I would guess, terms for things I'm not finding a name for out there. I tend to make them more informal. I'm trying to make this stuff accessible. And also, I don't want the highfalutin sound of some, the stuff that you get in psychology makes it sound like we're machines, and it's all that technical sounding
What's
stuff.
less penetrable when you make it humorous and full of joy,
Yeah,
it becomes more permeable.
Yeah, and more ironic. Because I think that irony is profound to me. I see it from the origins of life. But about my approach, about content, I'm a total prude. You've heard the kind of fussiness about the word create and all that. About delivery, I'm a slut. I'll say it anyway. I don't care. whatever works, whatever gets it across. So
That's the musical side of you, it sounds like.
There's a piece of that. I did have the great honor. I was good buddies with the 2020 Nobel Prize winner in poetry. And at one point she said to me, "You're no poet." She was very fussy and actually liked a lot of my poems, but we were.
So have you published any of those?
I publish in social media mostly. And before I die, it'd be nice to compile but I'd probably do it electronically. Books are for writing, not for reading. I read a book a week by speed listening. I've actually hurt my hearing as a result. But I mean, I'm guessing I play bass in funk, jazz, soul.
Now, wait a minute. Your hearing might have been hurt by the cymbals the drummer's using, not as much as the reading.
It's true, and yet my drummer's hearing isn't as bad as mine. Mine's really terrible. I was told I have the hearing of an 80-year-old sawmill worker.
Oh, God.
It's kind of sad because I live in the world of language and communication and conversation, as you can tell. So, yeah, someday I'll publish it. But the other thing is that having gotten as infatuated with these questions as I have, I pay less attention to audience than I used to. I try to maximize audience, but it goes up and down. And given the autophobia, it's I'm not your popular influencer. So last month I got 100,000 views on a video on how to roll trolls and stump Trumpists, but this week I'm down. So, and
you created a character on your social media.
I did.
And I'm wondering if you ever thought of building a kind of short piece around him, maybe getting him on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, yeah, now I have the courage of my insignificance in a way. I love the freedom to not be trying to get more audience. If I was trying to get more audience, I'd probably have to bend my stuff a bit more towards what would satisfy things like the scornography delights that are so popular, where you feel great about yourself because these other people are so terrible. I don't want to do that so much. I do want to point out terrifying human behavior. But yeah, Greg, you got something to say.
Yeah, because I have a question. Because what I'm hearing you speak right now is you are speaking to a desire to be authentic to yourself. And I'm wondering, what is the basis for your understanding of your authenticity?
Yeah, so I don't use the word authentic self for my. I don't trust the word because it's got that platonic vibe, as if I could get all the way in to see me to my very core essence. I don't think of myself that way. Here's how I think about myself. So I'm really interested in introspective intelligence.
But wait. Here's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
You made a decision. You gave Mark an answer about his spark of an idea to perform on Saturday Night Live. And that answer came from...
Yes. So you're absolutely right. That I said I'm trying to be truer to the motivations that when I reflect on them, mean the most to me. I'm trying to do the most with what I'm dealt, but I'm also pretty selective about my own appetites. I've got all sorts of appetites. I'm an egomaniac. I mean, I don't know anybody who isn't, and the people who claim they aren't, because egotism is beneath them. Hear the paradox there?
Mhm.
But if you want to talk about a core self, I do think I have one. We call it the hologenic constraint. And I do have a sense of what I am. So let me start with that. I am a constraint that channels energy into work that regenerates the constraint I am. What I mean by a constraint, constraints are really important to this work. So they're the overlooked aspect. If you're doing the ghost machine dance, hopping between those two, you're not actually paying attention to how constraints work. So for just a simple example of a constraint, traffic congestion isn't a physical piece of material. It's a difference in spacing that makes for a sluggishness and can change the path of least resistance to a detour around it, okay? So I'm interested in emergent constraints, how you'll get a constraint that would be like that. And I'm not something added to matter. I am a limitation on what matter does. And I'm doing that as long as I'm alive. And so the constraint that channels energy into work that regenerates a constraint it is my definition of being alive. And when that constraint fails, when it stops limiting what physical matter does, then it's a free-for-all for all the molecules that were in me. They could do whatever, and they'll be doing it passively because they're not trying to do anything. So what I'm trying to do, it's willpower, you could think of, or self-control. And I'm layers deep on that. So I got the same difference between life and death that a bacterium has, but I got this enormous layer of all the thoughts, all the appetites, all the impulses, all of that stuff. It's a giant cluster flux. So I can be, and most of the time I'm just being, operating on habit, or I can picture through words stepping outside of myself into Mark's shoes and seeing me as he sees me, or stepping out as if I'm not me to see me. But I could do that infinitely. I could say I'm a good guy. I could also say I like to think I'm a good guy. I could also say I like to think that I'm a good guy. I could go. It's infinite regress at that point.
One of our
So no core self.
One of our friends is getting her doctorate in the realm of empathy, especially in the business world. How does empathy work in your own work?
Got it. So I make a distinction between empathy, compassion, sympathy, and charity, and I need a clutch pedal between the two on one side and the two on the other. I want to be empathic. I want to be able to put myself in anyone's shoes. I also want to be compassionate, which would mean that I can recognize ways in which, to one degree or another, I've been in those shoes. I had a teaching experience where I suddenly said, "Oh, I get it, Stalin." There's a student in a 100-person class who was giving me a hard time, and I wanted to shut him down. So to put yourself in anybody's shoes, to imagine to remember when they were, but I can't do that if it leads to sympathy and charity. I can't afford that. I can't accommodate everyone. I think all these terms like love, empathy, compassion, they all boil down to accommodation from my perspective. And no, I don't want to accommodate everybody. The idea of loving everyone, no, I can give lip service to that, but no, I actually have to choose where I draw my boundaries, where I constrain. And so I would want, in the ideal situation, I'd be able to sit down with Hitler and say what he's saying in a way where he says, "Damn, you said it better than me." And then remember when I had that Stalin-like moment and then slit his throat in cold blood. That is, I need the clutch pedal between them. If I have to turn every empathic and compassionate thought into a charity and sympathy, I won't do it. I'll simply stop being empathic. Yeah. So a lot of what my work these days, the last video I put out is about strategic empathy. That's what hostage negotiators get into. Empathy is an interesting word. A torturer has to be empathic with their victim in order to discover how to inflict the most pain on them. Wild, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So you see, I'm really fussy about words. what we mean by them, and how we turn them into little love fests for ourselves, little love fests. Yeah, I had a conversation this morning with one of my friends from the hippie commune. He had gone on about Be Here Now. He was explaining to me how Be Here Now works, or mindfulness. And I was friends with Ram Dass. We talked about Be Here Now. I'll buy it. I don't think they know what they're even talking about. It just sounds hella good.
Hella for the Berkeleyites out there. All right, so here we go, Jeremy. This is the game show portion of our show.
Okay.
You get to pick the organic intelligence question or the AI question. Which one would you like?
Both.
Okay.
You choose.
First, the organic one.
Okay, good.
Do you agree that beer and human beings have an autogenic symbiosis going?
Autogenic. How do you mean autogenic?
They're mutually reciprocal and tied together, i.e., one benefits the other, and in its continued existence is designed to meet the other.
Good. So we have to distinguish between tools and beings. If you're talking about the yeast, yeah, it's the yeast. And by the way we make beer, do you make beer?
No, I have, but not recently.
Okay, so one way to make alcoholic drinks is to impose some cephalophobia on the yeast. That is, it dies in its own effluence. It can't live in its own shit. Okay, so that's where the alcohol level, that's where your proof comes from. Am I in a symbiotic relationship with my tools? Because beer by itself is inanimate. It's not actually trying to do anything. So am I in a, no, I'm not in a, you could say I'm in a parasitic relationship with my tools. As I'm relying on them, but I wouldn't quite say that either, because actually the tool's not trying to do anything. I'm not burdening it.
So beer is not trying to have you create more of itself.
That's right. And yet the tools that we find useful do proliferate. So this is where, and there are people.
And beer isn't in that index. Beer doesn't qualify for that proliferation.
But it's not trying to, it does. No, it does. As does this computer system we're on. I mean, one thing we notice is that the likeliness of this many computers, all built from these rare metals, really low likeliness, but now the likeliness has gone way up. So yeah, there's a proliferation of beer, but that's like saying that there's a proliferation of anything, of curtains. You know, it's a proliferation, but the curtains aren't benefiting from it. This is something Richard Dawkins talks like the memes are trying to get themselves transferred. That we're passive stations, that repeater stations for memes. Yeah, I don't buy it. It's a pretty image. There was a time when I bought it, but then I thought about it some more and said, no, actually, they're tools that get proliferated.
Okay, Greg, can I do the AI question now?
Yeah, but first I have to tell you, there is, for autophobia, beer is beerlarious. Aleman ales is stuff to drink for people whom it hurts to think and look into the pewter pot to see the world as the world is not. Oh, I have been to Ludlow Fair and left my necktie God knows where and carried halfway home or near pints and quarts of Ludlow beer. Then the world seemed none so bad, and I myself a sterling lad, and down in lovely muck I lay, happy till I woke again. Then the sun rose in the sky. Hey ho, the tale was all a lie. I'm almost done. The world, it was the old world, yet I was I, my things were wet, and nothing left remained to do but to begin the tale anew. So yeah, beer is great.
Beautiful. I love that.
That's awesome. I love that.
God.
Thank you.
That's
All right,
right.
so here's
go ahead.
Here's your AI
free
question.
To break into poetry anytime, man. That was brilliant.
Yeah. All right, here's your artificial intelligence question. You describe grooving in music and life as a state where expectations fit circumstances reliably. Conversely, you define an asshole as someone who overrides reality to maintain their own self-affirmation. Is assholery effectively a broken groove?
It's a delightful groove. Being an asshole is really fun. Playing God is so much easier than being human. It has negative consequences down the line, but a lot of what I'm trying to get across to people is this. There's a bunch of platitudes we say, like crime doesn't pay. No, crime pays really well if you can get away with it. the universe is the arc of the universe bends toward justice. Not at all. Not at all. It's one of the most unfair places I've ever been. The universe. So I am certainly concerned and delighted by AI, but I am also probably more interested in the problem of robotics, robotically playing hero, and how delightful, tempting, satisfying it is for everyone from a complete asshole to a public intellectual. So that's, once again, it feels like a groove, but the consequences are that for society it's a rut.
All right. So
yeah.
our current era, I
Yeah.
think the three of us are all very interested in what's happening with our American politics right now.
Amen to that. This isn't beer, by the way. This is vodka.
And so, yeah, amen to that.
Same amoeba, different flavor.
So what I'm wondering is it a plausible scenario that Trump has so much support to the degree where he is our president again because there is an avoidance in having to look at who am I really by having this angry Godhead that I could just say, yeah, keep going, keep smashing down, keep destroying.
Yeah, so here's how I think about that stuff this month. So I am more and more focused on what I call mojonomics or egonomics or affirmationomics. For human beings, self-confidence is a staple. It's a necessity. Because we are trudging through this sandstorm of mojo eroding possibilities, all the real and imaginary, past, present, future threats and missed opportunities that your dog can't think of, can't imagine. Okay, so self-confidence is something we need. Now, typically the way we have gotten our confidence is so through some degree of competence. As if you're good for something, you don't have to worry about being good for nothing. But it's gotten harder, and AI is one of the reasons it's going to get much harder to get competent at something. I have clients who are 20-year-olds trying to figure out what to do, stuck in depression and all of that. Yeah, I know it's harder for them than our generation or my generation. I'm about to turn 70. So what do we do in such situations? What have we done in the past when people are suddenly feeling what one researcher, Peter Turchin, calls elite overproduction? That is, there are more people scrambling for a position of some status than those positions are available, and those positions are shrinking because of AI. What do we do in those situations? We gravitate to someone like Trump, who offers free, unqualified, unconditional, eternal self-confidence. I talk to Trumpists all the time. I mean, I provoke it because I need to learn how to talk to these guys. I have a study group that'll meet this Sunday that people all over trying to figure out, how do you humbly humble or humiliate humans who will say and do anything to avoid human humility? So I'm fascinated by that appetite, and it's got very little to do with politics itself or ideas. I think of all that stuff as ornamentation. It's just a lifestyle brand. Because we keep on seeing the same shit over and over throughout history. Is that what happens is that some people bonk and say, oh, hell no, from now on, I'm in charge. And they talk like they are the supreme authorities about everything. That's what I think Trump has offered. He's given them a way to humble themselves before the Lord so they can lord it over everybody else. And it's quite the drug. It's really an intense drug. Hard to give it up. Heroin was so named because it makes every user feel like a hero.
Brilliant.
Trump is exactly that, only worse. Because
and is a scapegoat a necessity to that existence?
Yeah. So the goal for that state of mind is, if there's a problem, if anyone's a problem, it's anyone but me. That's all. And all you're doing is learning how to make up excuses, how to rationalize anything you want to do. It's an answer to the old prayer, grant me one reason, however flimsy, for what I want to do or what I just did. I mean, that would be, it's absolution is what it is. It's freedom from doubt, anxiety, guilt, all of that. So I don't think, and so when you watch how absurd it is to think that this guy's a good president, what you're actually watching is that self-confidence going crazy. It's autophobia on steroids.
All right, so how, when in your interaction with people, we're in this realm of academics with you, and it seems like he only can be where he is because he is getting support from intelligent people and experienced people. How is that being rationalized in your experience?
Well, I don't. In psychology, we talk about smart idiots. I mean, it's actually a technical term. So whether they're intelligent or not is a very independent question from this one about whether you love wisdom more than you love yourself. And I think what they've done is they've come up with master excuses. It's basically a holy war, full of scapegoats, because you have to have that. One of it's a gloataholic appetite for scornography, the pornographic satisfaction of. I assume we are all, to some degree or another, sadonarcissistic. There are two ways to lift yourself. You can lift yourself or put others down. So, I mean, I see this among my leftist friends as well. The scornography that's a hot item for people who crave reduction in anxiety. I call it exempt by contempt. If I show enough scorn or contempt for a trait you've got, it proves I don't have it. I'm exempt from it. So that's going to be a thing. That's going to be a major thing for humans, no matter what. And they'll brand it differently. I don't think of the culture wars as culture wars. That's lifestyle brands. That's the ornamentation. It's plumage. It's nothing more. I think of it as a self-confidence holy war. That's what we're doing. And the point of a holy war, notice that it's like moped
Outlaws.
It's an oxymoron. No deed too dirty for a saint like me. That's what holy war comes down to. And notice that. So no, I'm assuming that the most likely cause of extinction for humans will be that we'll be snuffed out by these brain farts, because what happens is reality gets hard. We check out into holy war crap, thereby neglecting reality, which in turn gets worse. So we would go down what I call a dissociation death spiral, but it's also a dumbass death spiral. So just check out the relationship between dumb and being an asshole is fascinating. When you're throwing a tantrum, you're in no place to learn anything. You're not going to be demonstrating anything. So if you feel like you're not keeping up and you feel dumb, you'll throw a tantrum like the tantrumplicans are, and then you won't learn, and so you go down the dumbass death spiral.
Wow.
So I'm working against it, but prospects aren't great because of who we are. Humans, I'm assuming that intelligent life, symbolic species anywhere in the universe, have snuffed themselves out many times on exactly the kind of stuff we're dealing with. Exactly.
Holy war in and of itself is such an oxymoron. It can't be it can't be holy if it's war. It's just not possible.
But it's also, so there are oxymorons that are just a good giggle, but there are also ones that give you profound insight. Like moped mavericks is a great one that way. And it's like the kind of Escherisms I was talking about before, which is, I haven't lived my life in vain for nothing, as an example of those kinds of interesting oxymorons to play with. A lot of my work is in that realm. I'm really interested in how you get those loops going. And to your point earlier about grooves, all grooves, whether we like them or not, are going to have an oxymoronic tendency. They are work cycles. Physically, you think about a reciprocating engine. It goes one way and then reverses and goes the other way and comes back to where it was. All habits are like that. From the origins of life, our origins of life version of things has that oxymoronic quality to it.
So is hope a fool's errand?
That's been on my mind a lot lately. I was good buds with Dan Ellsberg. He happened to be local, and we hung out a lot, and we had similar attitudes about hope. It had no bearing on whether we worked or not. I don't want to run on hope because it's a unreliable fuel. I run on curiosity and productivity instead. But I must be hopeful in some way. I think what I'm talking, so the tension between hope and realism fascinates me. They both sound like virtues, but they're kind of at odds with each other, at least sometimes. You know, what's the liked story? What's the likely story? Really interesting tension between the two. The latest thought I've had on it is that I want hope, but I want a fast refresh rate.
Well, it seems like hope deals in the future and realism is dealing in the present.
I wouldn't put it that way, not for us. Everything. So this is once again, the being in the present thing I find dubious. Organisms have to anticipate. All habits are anticipatory of what's likely to happen. An adaptation is like that. So the idea of being in the present, I understand bovine envy, the desire to be like a cow. Being human's hell. But I think realism is about likely outcomes as much as it is about the present.
All right. So when you get into this realm back again with medicine and science, and we have the placebo effect, and there's so many cases of you're going to be dead in 3 months, and 20 years later, that person's still thriving. It seems like there is a lot of evidence that our biological health is a symptom of our mental state.
You said it is a symptom. You drew a sweeping conclusion from some evidence that I wouldn't be able to make. So I know that hope makes a difference, and I'm very interested in the psychological placebo effects of religion, spirituality, the Wooly masters, all of that sort of stuff. It's got an effect. I think of it as somnipotent. It has some power. It's not omnipotent. And that's what you implied by the saying that it causes this. What you've just done is given voice to the Greco-Roman original meaning of skepticism. Skepticism was not primarily about, it was basically things might not be as bad as they look. That's where it started. And that's a very therapeutic advantage up to a point. And then it stops being a point. So that poem I recited from is a poem that's dealing with exactly that question. I was out on a walk yesterday with the founder of Move On. Do you know that organization?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Charlie Kirk's organization was modeled off of Move On. And she's a romantic, and I'm a romantic cynic. So I recited the whole poem to her because the poem is called Terrence, This Is Stupid Stuff. It's by a guy named A.E. Hausman, who was really interested in this stuff. And he was saying, his friends were saying, just drink your beer, enjoy. And he's saying, no, actually, I want to, therefore, while the world has still much good, but much less good than ill, and while the sun and moon endure, luck's a chance, but trouble's sure. I prepare for it as a wise man would, and train for ill and not for good. So he's actually talking this romantic, cynical thing that is at the heart of my work. It's the ironic, I call it dironic. It's dire irony. This life is a white knuckle ride tragedy, and it's also a hoot. And so that's where I live. And I don't think most people can afford to. I think it's just my dumb luck. I ended up with an incredibly lucky life. I had the appetite, aptitude, and opportunity to follow this shit out and try to figure out what the actual fuck I am. If I had a different life, I'd be praying to God for.
Every day.
From what I read, there's this element of your life that had you rise above the Maslow's hierarchy right away. Like there was an inheritance that gave you the intellectual freedom to pursue the depth and breadth of the knowledge that you've been sharing with us, right?
Yes, I should say my first 40 years, I didn't know what I was good for, and I was really anxious about the inheritance. It wasn't even that big an inheritance, but I felt it was the era in part. It was also that I was really slow figuring out what I was good for. I mean, really slow. And I felt like I needed to earn it somehow, and was busy with that until about 40 years ago, about 35 years ago. So it did afford me the opportunity, but it took me a long time to figure out what I was going to do with it. to feel even comfortable doing it. There was a time when, I'm serious, I thought that I'd have to be Martin Luther King level to justify the inheritance I got, and it wasn't that much. But I think it was an interesting combination of things that made me go that way. At 20, I gave away all the money I had. I joined the commune, gave it away, signed a vow of poverty, and thrived for about 7 years, doing manual labor, water systems in Guatemala, plumbing, carpentry, refrigeration repair, all sorts of things. Very useful for me, like a boot camp for a pampered kid. So yeah, it's been an interesting ride that way. And now I've got enough from my client work, but also from what's left of the inheritance to get through, but I don't have fancy tastes. The commune was also good that way because we ate beans.
Well, in a general sense, the precipitation and perpetration of a kind of depressed economic system that keeps masses under a thumb provides the opportunity to have a kind of cornering on the market of intellectual freedom. Like a lot of people, as you said, we're so stuck in just trying to find a way through that we turn to the opiate of religion in order to feel better. If we all had a higher baseline standard, we'd be able to explore some of these deeper ideas that you've explored in your life at a greater level.
Yeah, and so this brings me the kind of connection. What you just said is a great segue to what I would consider the other half of evolutionary theory and how that plays out in my personal life. So this is my non-spiritual spirited path. I'm extremely spirited. I resent when spiritual people think they got some corner on the spirited market. No, get over yourself. But in the meantime, there's a concept. My research colleague is writing a book right now called Falling Up. And it's about what happens when, so we talk about, in evolutionary theory, we talk about selective pressure, like selection demands a certain thing from us. And yet there's been this problem in evolutionary theory. It's a process of elimination. And if you start with simple organisms, why would there be these elaborate organisms like us? How do you end up with a hierarchy of capabilities, or you could say a heterarchy of it? The dominance of feelings over thoughts, thoughts over feelings, all those sorts. So the answer is fascinating. It's got everything to do with why we ended up with color vision and why, as an inheritor, I was anxious. So I'll just give you a brief description of this. So when the pressure gets off you, for example, when you retire, you could become useless. Or you got some freedom and you can actually play and mix and match your existing skills, what you already got. So the same would be true of a sabbatical or a skunk work or, an R&D lab. They give some people who have some skills already developed from whatever they've been doing a chance to mix and match. And what happens when you do that is you end up sometimes finding new synergies that then become addictive. So they become codependent. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. No. So for example, here's an example of how that played out. 35 million years ago, we end up in trees. There's fruit. They're already in a symbiotic relationship with birds. We were at that time the same as other mammals in that we generated our own vitamin C. You don't have to give a cat vitamin C. We lost the ability to make our own vitamin C because we had access to this external source of vitamin C. And we ended up evolving color vision to distinguish ripe from unripe fruit. Now, let me apply this to me as an inheritor. I'm going to switch completely over.
Loving this. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm given a skunk work at birth, right? I mean, not at birth, but at 16, my dad was there were reasons why he decided he was going to give money to his kids as young as that. All right. Well, one possibility is that I'll go the way of the vitamin C genes that cats have and I don't. It's turned into junk DNA in me. That is, because I'm not under pressure anymore, I could fall apart. I could just become useless. Okay.
No constraints equals dysfunction.
No, that's right. And so the tension between I want my internal constraints and my external constraints, I want to get them going in the right direction. And in my lucky life, I've been able to get them working that way. But that's also because I had a lot of freedom to design my own environment. For example, I don't even have a house plant. I haven't been partnered in 8 years. It's been a great relief to get married to selectively populated solitude. Friends without benefits, because the benefits tend to confuse the friendships. I love an unencumbered life because my mind is going. One of my last girlfriends said, "You're feral." I said, "I'm not really feral. I'm domesticated to other things." So anyway, but I ended up with all these interesting synergies that I'm now quite addicted to. My mojo, I'm very interested in confidence currencies. My confidence currency comes from jams like this. This is
Right.
You can imagine. This feels good to me.
Yeah, to us too.
Oh, there we go. Okay, this is fun. Good.
Yeah. Yeah. So your mojo comes from that.
And other things too. I mean, I watch movies and pretend I'm the hero for a few minutes. It's very important to my work.
And the brain doesn't know the difference.
The brain does, and that's huge to me. So let me just. So what are we going to do about this need? Everybody's got their need for self-confidence in a world where it's going to be a little harder to come by, and people don't notice the difference, or at least they would prefer to feel heroic, whether they are or not. So I've gotten really interested. I do a lot of promoting. My next video I'll make today probably is about this topic. I call it safe escapism. I call it idsercise. That is, you're exercising your ids. I call it off jerking. I call it strategic gullibility. I've been to a Trump rally and I've been to a death metal concert. They're exactly the same, except for what happens in the parking lot after.
Right.
After the death metal concert, everybody gets in the car. They zip up. In effect, they've been masturbating for an hour. It's all cosplay and singing along with badass lyrics that you're not paying any attention to and feeling like a hero. They get in the car and get back to reality. So to me, it's not about how far out you go, but whether you remember to come back. My only message to Trumpists is self-love is important, but get a room. Don't let it go to your head. Zip up after, and do not turn basic infrastructure into your circle jerk vanity project. That's all I'm trying to get across. I'm not trying to get them to believe my politics or anything. I'm trying to say, handle this through your exercise. I mean, I think this video is going to start with me saying, when you are masturbating or watching TV and feeling like a hero, you are doing a public service. The only problem is when you start to do that stuff as if you rule the world, as if it's more real than reality. That's the only way I can see humans surviving. I don't think we can we've about used up the Earth's carrying capacity for this self-flattering bullshit. We have to do something with it. We cannot transcend our egos. That's not going to happen.
Well, so if we're talking about ego and a love of self as a part of existence.
Yeah, human existence.
Right. So then we take as an example of human existence, Mother Teresa, and we take Donald Trump. And stripping away elements of religion being involved, like I see in Mother Teresa, someone who practiced selflessness to such a degree that her existence lifted up throngs of people, thousands of individuals' lives were improved because of the way she lived and acted. And Trump, I
understand the contrast. I understand the contrast. I did spend a day in Delhi. I dedicated a day to working in Mother Teresa's orphanage there. I left after half a day. I could not stomach it. In the meantime, if you read Christopher Hitchens, you find out some interesting things about Mother Teresa, just like we did about Cesar Chavez. And in the meantime, so to your general point, rather than the two extremes, because I'm much more interested in the gray area ambiguities than the extremes. And also the idealized people tend to end up being human anyway.
Absolutely. Like,
Martin
Luther King Jr.,
Right, that's right, exactly. So you've got that complication, but in the meantime, you are making an important point, which is there are ways in which you could come away from religion with wisdom, just as you can from movies. I don't think you can so much from masturbation. I do think of this as ego. I think of the general category as egotainment. It's a way of fluffing ourselves up, which we humans need. Okay, so and I think it's a human necessity. Entertainment's been interesting the way we treat it, kind of like it's an elective, but it's also kind of a necessity. It's been very ambiguous. I think this actually nails it, is that we need that self-confidence boost. You can also, it can be mixed with education or with art and all of that. But by that aspect of it, the egotainment part is important. How we manage that becomes an interesting question. So you could say that she got her, Mother Teresa got her egotainment from all that religious belief. Did it work exclusively? Well, no, she was anti-abortion for India, for example. She had lots of wild notions that she got from her religion. So yeah, that's an interesting aspect of it.
And here's what I'm wondering, because it does seem like there's a struggle for myself with ego, the super Greg is everything. Aren't I amazing? I also have a desire to help people. I would love for my life to have a strong impact on a lot of people, that their life well-being is lifted because I exist. And the struggle is sort of a self-consciousness that having that desire I see is very egotistical. It's like, I want to matter.
Right.
And like with a Dr. Martin Luther King, a Gandhi, a Mother Teresa, a populace was improved. Their lives were personally improved by this individual's interaction.
Yeah, I get that, and I love that you're dealing with that tension. It's actually related to what's it called, Luther's terror. Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King. He was dealing with a similar question. He wanted to get into heaven. He was a very anxious, high on neuroticism, perhaps because of his hemorrhoids. He had a serious problem with hemorrhoids. But anyway, he was just a tight ass. And he wanted to get into heaven, but he also felt arrogant for begging God to let him into heaven. And we get all of Protestantism comes out of that. Okay, so I get that, and my assumption is that it'll be a mixed bag. I never do anything for just one reason. And I don't have the problem with ego that some people do. We have a bunch of flattering names for it and a bunch of disparaging names for the same need for self-confidence. I can call it a need for love or connection. That sounds hella virtuous. I can say it's vanity or ego. That makes it sound bad. I'm trying to understand what it is. I also assume it's natural for all of us. And I have no problem with the part of me that wants to do useful work. I just described it. This is my joy. It's a confidence currency for me. It's also helpful, I hope. I cannot assume that it is. If you're a scientist, you have to embrace the possibility that your entire life will be spent barking up the wrong tree. That's just how it is. And so I make my guesses about how to manage it. But this comes back to the thing about authentic self. I never do anything for just one reason. I have I'm multi-level headed. I got all sorts of stuff going on in me all the time. I'm at peace with that going on inside of me. And my equanimity comes from being equally anxious in opposite directions. That is, for example, that I'm too assertive or not assertive enough for the situation at hand. I think of life, remember, I'm about the constraints idea. I think of life as like driving down a very populated, winding road in the dark with two backseat drivers nagging me about risks on opposite sides and me trying to steer the road. That's what it's like.
How do you validate you're measuring those two poles and know that you haven't created a measuring system that fits your ego?
Yeah, so that's why I'm a fallibilist and an ironist. Fallibilism is a term from philosophy, and the way I think of it is no matter how confident I am in a bet, I remain still more confident that it is a bet.
Okay.
This is all guesswork.
Perfect. Yeah,
Life has
yeah,
been an
okay.
iffy guesswork from the beginning. We
Yeah.
will encounter ironic situations. What's the definition of an ironic situation? It's where the outcome is the opposite of what you expected. Okay, so they're going to be that. I've got what I call confidence about that. And this has been really interesting to me lately. So you got a guy like Trump, who is a confidence hoarder. He can never get enough. He's totally addicted to confidence. He can't, none is good enough. And then there's a kind of confidence that I basically learned from my research colleague. He's over the question of whether he's a good person. He's not thinking about it much. He's not distracted by the question. He's doing what he's doing. He's placing careful bets. He's not confident that he's a good person. He's just over the question. I find myself more and more in that. A lot of older folks say that they get to that place. And so I'm really interested in how to get that confidence going for more people. But it's going to be hard as hell in this current era because it's just going to get tougher and tougher to feel competent, and people will become confidence hoarders.
Well, confidence is antithetical to being purchased, to motivating purchase.
To motivating what?
Purchase. Commerce. The more the more we undermine a person's sense of well-being, the more they're likely to buy that shit that we're trying to sell them.
Yeah, and so this is another fascinating area. So I happen to have recently read an academic history of attitudes about masturbation, and it turns out that it became suddenly a big deal at the beginning of the 1700s, and it corresponded to a time when fiction was suddenly becoming popular, and women were sitting around reading fiction. And I think of it as people saying suddenly, "Oh shit." Everybody's got their own, anybody can come up with their own fantasies. What are we going to do about this? And there's a series you can get on YouTube for free called The Century of the Self that is dealing with this in the last century. I think it's fabulous. And it lays out 3 basic models for how you deal with this. And I'm adding this 4th one, which I called safe escapism or exercise. So one version of it is you come up with a common fantasy that you impose on everyone. So this would be like how communism works. Another is that you channel it into commerce. And this is what the series is about. It's about Freud's nephew, who coined the term public relations and taught people, created the whole demand for status symbol purchases. The shopaholic thing that's going on for a lot of us in the meantime. There's also, you could say, a libertarian version of it that you got in the 1970s from among the hippies, which was do your thing. A free for all, and it'll all work out. I mean, I think of my hippie years as a collision course between we are all one, and if it feels good, do it. We didn't think about it, but this is quite the tension that we're all dealing with. And then, so you've got those 3 versions, and I'm saying actually what we need to do is get better at jerking off to our fantasies of self-importance safely, and then zipping up after. And what I'm trying to do,
not proffering them on everybody else.
Yeah. So I'm trying to demote the highfalutin ones like church to an elevated status for all of them, whether you watch movies or follow sports or shop, to recognize that we all need to do that stuff. We need the egotainment in order to feel okay about ourselves. I hope you know, I have one friend who says he doesn't, what it's like when your self-confidence plummets. It's no fucking fun. Yeah, I mean, I think what drives us most is comfort in our own skin. And that's not a comfortable feeling. So I think we need to be able to afford it. And the only way I can see doing it is virtually, through virtual virtue and virtual vice. I think that,
God. There's so much more. I want to ask one more question, and then I'm done with my list of questions, and we can move on.
It turns out I just found out that I have to go in a minute. So, one more question, and then
wait. Well, then let's get to the one that we always ask. Let's get to we have 2.
Good. Okay.
Right. One is, what are your thoughts on animism?
It's another version of dualism. So animism, I have research colleagues, anthropologists who work on this stuff, done some seminal work on how animism works. He wrote a book called How Forests Think. he's not talking about force actually thinking, but he's talking about how these people he studied in Ecuador treat it as though it's thinking. So it's a kind of animism. It comes naturally to humans. We do it a lot. It's fascinating to watch how we do it. That's one of the things you can do with language, is you can imagine that everything, you're reading between the lines. With language itself, the word itself, the token, you have to read between the lines to get to its meaning. AI is just working in tokens. There's no meaning in there. It's just manipulating tokens. It's interpretation in, interpretation out. But
Symbol
we're
without
bound to animate it. I'm assuming that AI theism is going to be a big deal, that we're going to treat AI like God, right?
Okay.
So that's what I think of animism.
We could go on and on and on, and we have run out of time. Dr. Sherman, if we could do another episode with you, I would love it.
Any old time.
Wonderful. We have
Let's
a traditional question that we end all of our rides with guests with. So, Mark, would you like the honor?
All right, here we go. Eminem or Foo Fighters?
Well, I'm an old fart. So Eminem, I would say.
Hey,
Foo Fighters sounds like more of the same to me. But then again, I play jazz and funk and all that sort of stuff. So it's a different kind of. I'm an old guy.
real quickly, Flea, the bassist from Red Hot Chili
Yeah,
Peppers?
and I know about his new jazz work.
Yeah, it just came out today, and it's brilliant. Really, really good.
There we go.
Jeremy, thanks for being with us. Do you want people to contact you? What
Yes,
should we
I
put
do.
in the show notes?
So I do want them to contact me. So you can find me on YouTube with a channel called Trying Beings, which
We'll
is
link to that.
double entendre. It's about organisms that try, but also the people who try our patients. You can contact me. I'll send you all the places you can have way too much of me.
Fantastic. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks
and
for
we
having
look
me.
forward to the next time.
Yeah, anytime. Love it. Take care, you guys.
Bye.
Recording stopped.